Well, first of all, I am and have been watching very closely what has been happening in Kosovo, having worked with the Kosovo and Albanian American community to bring that narrative 30 years ago to the attention of the man who would become president and his administration. One very important point: the recent elections were immensely successful in the sense that they reflected the functionality of the Kosovo Constitution. The Kosovo Constitution is arguably the most remarkable, inclusive, and liberal constitution from get-go, out of the post, in the race, in the history of constitutions. Please recall that the American Constitution, few people had the right to vote, and even some people were considered half human. So instead, by contrast, we have this incredible constitution. The Serb community participated in that election far at not record numbers, but far better numbers than the near zero participation of the last couple of times. So it worked, it functions.
Yes.
The prime minister steadfastly saying, let the Constitution be the vehicle that brings us together, and not ASEM, the Association of Serb Municipalities, which is purposely designed to destroy the country. So I would say to the political leadership there, in light of what's happening in the Middle East, in light of what's happening in Ukraine at this point, it behooves them to immediately form a government.
Yes.
It must be done. People need to set aside micro grievances and look at the macro situation. And once that unified government is established, the, again, constantly dynamic, constantly steadfast Prime Minister Albin Kurti, whose strength in defending the Constitution I very much admire, Albin Kurti needs to look at the next period of time of his governance as an area that he does as much as possible to bring commerce and business forward. But he must, with Prime Minister Rama, be extremely strong to Europe.
Yes.
They must put their foot down, because the victimization that Europe, led by the Germans in particular, is showering repeatedly upon the Balkans, must end.
Yes.
They need to turn and think of how would Trump handle this. He simply would not put up with it. There need to be ways to end this.
Yes.
And then by doing that, you are able to usher in far more business. Without business, you cannot progress in establishing the economy, because even in Albania, an economy that's 25% tourism and 24 or 5% legal or illegal drugs or whatever it is, that does not build a permanent ongoing economy. And without full integration in Europe, it makes it very difficult. So there's a kind of war being waged against the West Balkan Six.
Now, you mentioned the Association of Serb Municipalities. Europe has pretty much conditioned any hope of dreaming the EU on this. The Council of Europe has now, it appears, Kosovo is not going to be able to join the Council of Europe unless it creates this association, something which was never a condition for it to join the Council of Europe. Everything is being pinned on this association, creating this. You have to do it, you have to do it. I was in Jakova in November. I did a number of interviews with people who survived massacres during the war. And it was, I mean, you can imagine how you know, traumatizing it was listening to all of that. But the thing I heard from everybody I spoke to, even people I didn't interview, people in cafes and restaurants and things, was that they think, because Serbia has never apologized for many of the crimes, because Serbia denies, because there's never been any justice, because the EU does not hold Serbia accountable for anything it does, its infringements on Kosovo territory, terrorist attacks, kidnapping policemen. They fear that by establishing this association, it increases the risk of something like the war happening again, mass atrocities. And this was from normal people, you know, and I can't help but think Albin Kurti is listening to his people, saying, I don't want to risk it.
I just spoke with General Wesley Clark, who was Commander-in-Chief of NATO forces, the famous general. And he told me, he reminded me, he said, look, Christopher, Serbia has 20 advanced positions along the Kosovo border. To establish 6, 10, 12, whatever number of Serbian municipalities would be to establish advanced positions, military positions within a country 8 times the size of New York City. It is a non-starter. As a boy, I asked directly Martin Luther King, how may I help? And he replied to me, look evil in the eye and give it no succor.